So, Alfred, first of all, let's demystify this general notion that the politicians are mostly not experts in certain areas and cannot be professionals and cannot be technocrats. Mostly those of us who are politicians are technocrats who find space in the political system.
Okay.
There's this general notion that, oh, because he's a politician, you don't put politician there, you don't put politician there. But there are technocrats who are politicians. There are people with the requisite skills and knowledge set to be able to lead the change management that we so seek in these institutions. And so I agree with Professor Addai that, look, leadership is always the cause. And anybody who has sat in my class before, I don't miss a lecture without talking about leadership, because I believe that leadership is what drives change management. So all these state institutions that are running at a loss, the solution is not privatization. The solution is not just selling it off, divesting it. And data, yeah, I strongly disagree. And data is replete with evidence that state institutions that were divested under the guise of not doing well have mostly, in time past, have not survived under private sector management. So it was not necessarily because it was being managed by government. And there are studies that have shown that those institutions that fail are not necessarily because they were state-owned institutions. And across the world, there are state-owned institutions that are doing well. And again, if lessons from the United States of America is anything to go by, that should tell you that the market economy, running a purely sole market economy, competitive market economy, doesn't exist. And when there was the credit crunch in America, Obama had to take the bull by the horn and implement a socialist market system to be able to bring America back onto its feet. Now, if you look at most of the businesses that are doing well in America, the state has interest in them.
Exactly.
And go to the UK, most of the businesses that are doing well, the states have interest in them. And the Chinese have moved away from the purely communist, system to a socialist market system, which is driving the Chinese economy now. As we speak, when you assess the Chinese economy vis-a-vis the US economy, in terms of nominal GDP, Chinese is the second biggest economy. But when you adjust at purchasing price parity, Chinese is the biggest, China is the biggest economy in the world. You understand? And how did they do that? They did that by targeting the various commercial sectors of the economy. So government invests directly in every single business. Are you aware that as part of the international policy, international relations policy of the Chinese people, they go out to do commerce. The commerce is driven by government initial investment and government monitoring. And so the Chinese embassy in Ghana, they are here purposely for trade interest and business interest. Here we are as a country, even our embassies across the world do not have trade attaches. And our trade attaches, when we send them, they are people who do not even have the requisite skills to identify opportunities of trade and all those things. And so this whole business of always going for the low-hanging fruit, so let's privatize, let's privatize. It has never saved us. No, let me even cite a very common example that we can all relate to. Ghana Telecom. You recall when we were fighting against the sale of Ghana Telecom to Vodafone. And the government said, oh, it was only privatization that could save Vodafone. What has happened to Vodafone now?
Well, there's a proposal of some level of private sector participation.
Exactly.
Not so much about the whole privatization.
And that is the socialist market system. And so you have a system where government has controlling interest or somewhat an interest, but there is private participation. So that as the private protects their capital interest, the public also protects the social interest of the business. Otherwise, you would run into troubles. And so all this analysis of the state institutions and all the institutions that have been mentioned here, particularly ECJ, I cannot fathom why ECJ should be making losses. I know that because of the systems they are running and the fact that it is driven by tech It is driven by technology, and its foundation is in zeros and ones. There would always be ways that people can balance the zeros and ones to reduce efficiency so that they can make personal gain. It is there. But let's do a proper assessment of the energy provision value chain and see where the problem is. I, from where I sit, my discovery is that the challenges of UCG is mainly from the recovery and the collection of the bills.
And the waste.
And you see, the waste will come from maybe the system, the transmission systems and all that. There will be theft also along the line. But if the recoveries are efficient enough, I verily tell you that UCG will not be losing. If you look at our energy cost, the price of energy in Ghana, and you look at the build-up, and you look at the potential, the energy that we produce, and the potential losses that will be made along the transmission lines. I mean, because they are conductors. With the conductors, depending on the quality of the conductors that you use, you may be losing a lot of energy along the line. But the main issue is recoveries. And so, for example, if we want to fix the problem of ECG, and the problem is recoveries and the collections, why don't we look at bringing in private participation at the recoveries level? So, for example, let's segment this country into maybe 5 or 6, segments, because then you can also give it to one country, one company, like we gave to PDS. Let's look at divesting it through a competitive tender, getting private participation in the collection process, so that when ECG takes the power from Gridco, then they offload the power to the private person who is supposed to do the collection. That private person is now bearing the responsibility of paying for the energy that has been supplied to the private person. Now, the private person, because it's also driven by profitability interest, would make sure that there will not be any losses. People are not stealing the power. You understand?
Yeah.
And when anybody steals power, they will take more aggressive measures in dealing with the individual. And so when you do that, and there's private parts, for example, let's say Accra Central, you are giving it to Messrs. Kwebu Company Limited to do the collection, and you are giving the Accra Central 50 megawatts of energy. All you need is for Kwebu Company Limited to pay equivalence of the 50 megawatts that you are supplying to it. So Martin Kwebu will now implement a management system that will make him efficient and will not run losses. You understand?
I do. But
so the work and the assets of ECG is maintained by the state. ECG is managed the way it's supposed to be managed. If there are any staff of ECG that, I mean, for example, if Martin Kwebu is coming into that business, he may not have all the technical competences with all the staff and all that. So there may be other staff of ECG that will be required to perform the service under the company. And because they are operating under Kwebu Company Limited, Martin Kwebu will make sure that you are not just working with them and you are redundant and you are not doing anything, but you are productive, so that he will be able to make his profit line. And so I think that this whole issue about state-owned agencies making losses is not about just the fact that they are being managed by the state, but also most importantly about management. I think that there is a management problem in our institutions, and they should be looked at individually and not severally. And that is why some of the agencies will post profit, but some would also post loss. You understand? For example, I cannot by any stretch of imagination imagine why cocoaboard should be making losses. But again, I have decried this lack of efficient management at cocoaboard for the past few years. And most of the management decisions that have been taken in the past few years is mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling because you are running an institution that thrives on crop production. So if you are producing less, it means that you will not make your money, you will lose. So what it means simply is that you focus more on the agronomy of the production, so that the farmer is able to produce enough crops so that you can go and sell and make your profit. But if you are not investing in the agronomy and you are investing in other irrelevant areas that do not drive the productive sectors of what you run in, you are going to run at a loss.
But why is not happening?
Prof, please.
Why is not happening?
Please, Prof. So I am decrying what has been the case in the past.
Okay.
Because there were times that cocoaboard was making profits. Yeah. We have seen that in this country. In the last 8 years, cocoaboard has invested absolutely very little in the productive sectors of cocoa.
Because we saw the divergence in their investment in some other areas that were not on the core mandate of cocoaboard. But then again, so what are you going to be doing differently? Because now you have the mandate, you have the power, you have appointed a CEO there. What are you going to do differently?
So Alfred, I was going to go there, but I just wanted you to appreciate the situations very well. Because you cannot profess one fit for all solution to all these losses that the agencies are facing. Now in cocoaboard, the key way to solve this problem is just to target the production of the beans of the cocoa. And how do you do that? One, cocoa research, as we speak, is even struggling. Allocations to cocoa research is a problem. Cocoa rehabilitation, the last few years, they said they were doing cocoa rehabilitation. They moved in there, subcontracted it to other people, cut down the cocoas, and they didn't invest in cocoa seedling production. So there are no seedlings. I know of farmers who have lost, they've cut down all their cocoas, and they have no seedlings to plant for 3 years. And they are supposed to be giving some bonus, some 500 cedis bonus. That 500 cedis bonus is not even going. You understand? So I believe that if we focus on the motivation for production and get the farmers to produce, indeed, like any businessman, the farmer also wants to make profit. If he realizes that the cocoa that he's producing, he is not getting support, there is high input price, so the inputs are expensive, they are not getting support from government, they will not produce. And so for me, if you sit at cocoaboard and you take syndicated loan, for example, and you use that syndicated loan to fund other irrelevant things in government budget, and you do not go and do cocoa spraying exercise, you do not give input subsidy or input support to the farmer, and you do not encourage the growing of new farms, you are joking. And Alfred, let me make this point. You see, cocoa is one crop that thrives on the climate. It grows in a certain environment. Now, the issue of environmental degradation is impacting the growing of cocoa in the south. But it is not only the southern part and the middle forest zone that you can grow cocoa. In actual fact, cocoa can do very well in areas around Uti region, Hohoi, and all those places. But we are not investing in producing cocoa there. Now, because of the degradation of the vegetation around the southern area. Now, when you grow the cocoa, the yields are low. So you may be having 100 acres of cocoa. You may do all the cultural practices. You may manage it very well, but the yields will be low because the vegetation is also having impact on the productivity of the yields. And so what I think the cocoa board should do in a strategic move to expand our production of cocoa, because again, cocoa is very strategic for this economy. In fact, it balances our forex. The reason why our exchange rate struggles is because of cocoa. Because it's a commodity that trades very well.
Right.
And so I believe that we should advance through special initiatives the production of cocoa in the middle belt, because that place, because of the non-movement of the galamsey and all those things to those areas, because they don't have the gold as it is in the south. And so if we move the production of cocoa there through a special arrangement to get people to produce the cocoa, you give them the seedlings, you give them the inputs, you give them the fertilizer, as we used to do in the past. And Alfred, that is what helped us to posit the profits that we made in the past years before we left government. And so I think there is always a way out. It's a change management thing, depending on who is in the helm of affairs and how he manages the people and how he manages the staff. And again, I disagree with people who think that when the company is overbloated in terms of the staff it leads to redundancy, and that is what makes them ineffective. No. It's not necessarily the case.
Okay.
Look, it is because management has not found use for that labor that is in there. If there is an efficient management model that is being employed, everybody will find use. I can assure you that somebody will say that the cocoaboard payroll is overbloated.
Yes.
But yes, somebody will tell you that.
Yes.
But all those on the payroll, if you have an effective management system, you can put them to use and they will produce to increase the output of the company. And these are things that we should look at as a country. And not quickly run to the low-hanging fruits of, oh, go and privatize. So let's look at management systems that work. It works across the world. And let's get people to work and protect jobs.
Measuring productivity